It's time to get excited about Taskmaster Season 19. We now know the lineup who will be going up against Greg and Alex in 2025. They are Fatiha El-Ghorri, Jason Mantzoukas, Mathew Baynton, Rosie Ramsey, and Stevie Martin. We're here to run through who they are, if you don't know them, if you do know them, who we think might do well, and give some very early predictions on what the kind of state of play might be at the end of the season. So Patrick, what are your initial thoughts on the lineup for Taskmaster Season 19?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think in some ways it's quite typical of a Taskmaster lineup in that you've got some established names, you've got some more kind of up-and-coming comedians, and you've also got a cast member of Ghosts, which is, three of the boxes ticked right there. But also one of the kind of bigger surprises, and this had been hinted at by Alex before the lineup was announced, that we have an American Hollywood international star in there as well, which is a first certainly for the UK version of Taskmaster, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's brand new territory. I do think this is one of those lineups where every lineup that Taskmaster announces, there's always that element of people going, who are these people? I've not heard of some of them. You will get that a lot, I think, with this lineup too, but like with so many previous seasons, it will almost certainly be the people you've not heard of who end up being your favourites at the end of the season. So we're going to run through who they are, if you recognise any of them. If you don't know who they are, we're going to start with, in the first seat, Fatiha El-Ghorri. So Fatiha is a British stand-up comedian and comedy writer. She first got into comedy about 10 years ago. Since then, she's kind of gone from strength to strength. She's done the stand-up circuit. She's also done the You and Dave / Comedy Central panel show circuit. Things like Unforgivable, Guessable, Alan Davis' As Yet Untitled, Rod Gilbert's Growing Pains, and also Outsiders, which was the kind of Taskmaster Goes Camping show David Mitchell hosts. She's in the second season of that, and I really recommend, if you haven't seen the second season of Outsiders, to watch it, partly because it's a big step up, I think, on the first season, and also Fatiha's in it partnered with Phil Wang, previous Taskmaster contestant, and she's really good, and it'll give you a good flavour, I think, of what she'll be like on Taskmaster. She doesn't suffer falls gladly in that, so if that's any indication, then Alex could be in for a tough time, which would be great to watch. Other TV work that she's done has been Mr. Big Stuff, the Sky comedy with Danny Dyer that was recently released. And she's also part of the writer's room for We Are Lady Parts, the fantastic Channel 4 sitcom. She's got a book coming out in April, which will be around the same time that this Taskmaster is airing. So looking forward to reading that, looking forward to seeing her on the show. Sitting next to her in seat number 2 will be Jason Mantzoukas.
Yes, so this is the Hollywood star that we mentioned earlier. He might not necessarily be a huge household name to some UK fans, but he is a fairly big deal. He's certainly, if you watch a lot of American sitcoms, you will definitely have seen him in at least one thing, whether that's The League, where he had a recurring role, or his parts that he's had in Parks and Recreation, or The Good Place, or Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He pops up in a lot of sitcoms, and often very memorably. He's also well known for his podcast, How Did This Get Made, which is, he co-hosts with two other hosts, and they kind of discuss some of the worst films ever made, or at least some of the worst films ever made in their opinions, and discuss how they came into being and what went wrong and that kind of thing, with a very kind of comedic edge, of course. And on that podcast previously, if you're a listener to it, you might not be too surprised to see him pop up in the Taskmaster lineup, because he has made references to it. So there are little Easter eggs from the past that he has been a fan of the series. He's also done film work. He was in The Dictator, and a slightly less comedic film. He was in John Wick Chapter 3, so a proper blockbuster there in his history as well. And it's going to be really interesting to see how he meshes with the cast. Obviously, he's got a very, American style, which will be interesting to see how that brushes up against the UK fans. But I definitely think he's going to bring a lot of passion to the series. He clearly is a fan of the show. Otherwise, he would not have come over from America to do it. And so I think it's going to be fascinating to see how he gets on.
Yeah, I reckon so. And next to him in seat number 3 will be Mathew Baynton.
Yes, the Ghosts former cast member and one of the writers of Ghosts, and one of the kind of creative forces behind that hugely popular sitcom. And he works with this group of various other people who also created the Horrible History series. So, a lot of great comedic pedigree there. He's also had some more serious, more dramatic roles. He was in A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which came out recently. And he's popped up in films as well. He was in, he had quite a reasonably big role in Wonka opposite Timothée Chalamet. So yeah, again, Hollywood representation. Yeah. Taskmaster really has gone Hollywood this time. But he joins a kind of club of former Ghosts alumni on the show. We've previously had Kyle Smith-Bino, we've had Charlotte Ritchie, we've had Lolly Adefope. So clearly this is quite a good line to go from Ghosts, on Taskmaster. Let's see how he gets on.
Who will be next? Who's the next Ghost?
I mean, there's still plenty of them to choose from,
Seat number 4 is Rosie Ramsey. Rosie Ramsey is a podcaster and writer and presenter. She's best known for her work with her husband, Chris Ramsey, who's the previous Taskmaster contestant, on the podcast Shagged, Married, Annoyed. If you don't live in the UK, it's quite difficult to oversell just how big this podcast is. It's one of the biggest going in the UK. It's broken a number of records. It was in the top 10 of the podcast charts for a whole year, which was the first time that had ever happened. They hold the record for the biggest live crowd for a live podcast recording. It's a hugely popular podcast. She's not, strictly speaking, a comedian. She's coming at it from more the presenter angle. She's very kind of witty and funny and relatable, though, so I think she'll suit Taskmaster really well. She's also been on another couple of TV shows. She was in a Strictly Christmas special. Did really well there. She's hosted Comic Relief. So she's emerging on various other bits and pieces, drawing from her experience as a presenter. She originally was on Capital Radio. And so this will be another kind of good example of showing Rosie Ramsey in a different light as well from just being on the podcast with Chris. So looking forward to seeing Rosie. In seat number 5, we have Stevie Martin. That's Stevie Martin, not Steve Martin. Imagine there are probably a few Taskmaster fans who will skim raid the lineup.
We've not quite won that Hollywood.
The only murders in the building, Steve Martin is on the show. Not quite, not yet anyway. This is Stevie Martin, who is a brilliant UK sketch comedian and stand-up. She first came to prominence as part of the sketch troupe Massive Dad with Liv Kingsman and Tessa Coates. Stevie and Tess have since worked together on a podcast as well. They've also co-written a book called Nobody Panic. Nowadays, Stevie's best known for her sketch comedy online. Got millions of views on things like TikTok, Instagram. She's got a YouTube page as well. And she's done some TV work as well. She was on Late Night MASH, which was the continuation of the MASH report, where she played one of the newsreaders. She had small roles in things like Breeders and Starstruck. She won't be as familiar, I imagine, to a lot of people watching Taskmaster. This might be the first time they've encountered her. So she's got a big kind of potential there to explode as the breakout star of the season. Let's talk about the lineup more generally here. Jason Mantzoukas.
Yeah.
Do you think he is the most famous person ever to have done Taskmaster?
It's interesting because he probably very much has an argument to that. But some people, certainly UK fans, if they're kind of casual comedy fans, and you said that to them, would probably balk and say, no way, he's not as famous as Richard Osman or Bob Mortimer.
Yeah.
But I guess for an international audience, he is a big deal. So it depends on which way you look at it, really. He's not as big a name in the British comedy scene because he's not from the British comedy scene.
Yeah.
But if you look a little bit further outward, he is quite a good get for the series. So I think he's got a claim to being the most famous. It just depends, I guess, how you judge that fame.
Where you're viewing it from, I think. Yeah, I think he'll definitely bring some ice to the show. I think people will watch Taskmaster this season because of him that wouldn't have seen the show before. I'm trying to think who else was the worldwide name when they did the show. Someone like Mae Martin, maybe. They had obviously a big Netflix show. But yeah, I think he's got to be up there, certainly in terms of film work, TV work. So yeah, excited to see how he takes to it. In terms of who we think might do well, obviously we've got no idea at this stage. Who of the 5 stands up as someone you think has a good chance of actually winning the whole season?
I reckon Mathew Baynton did quite well. I think my memory seems to tell me that previous Ghosts cast members, while they've been very entertaining on the show, haven't been the best when it comes to the points. And I think he could kind of, I guess maybe put that right.
This is the moment the Ghosts cast come good.
Exactly, and it's just going to be, going to completely turn things around. But I think he's got a good mix behind of thoughtfulness and kind of thinking outside the box, but also, as we see in Ghosts and with some of the stuff he's written, silliness as well. And I think, generally speaking, when you look at previous winners, that kind of combination of lateral thinking and silliness is exactly what you want. And I think he's probably got that. Looking at it, straight away, I think he's the one who jumps to mind as having the best mixture.
Yeah, I could see that. I think you're onto something there. I think I'm really looking forward to any of the tasks that involve acting, any of the kind of creative tasks, because not only have you got Mathew Baynton, who is a fantastic actor, you've got Jason, who's an actor as well, been in comedy, films, TV. Stevie Martin's also a really good comedy actor. So I think any of those creative ones might be the highlights of the season. Yeah, looking forward to that. If I had to pick someone, I'd say maybe Rosie Ramsey. I think obviously Chris has done the show, did really well on the show as well. She would have seen the show before, I'm assuming she watched Chris, and he would have probably given her some maybe tips and advice beforehand. She just seems like she's competent, she's with it. I think she's going to like have a good mixture of getting the task done, also being very silly as well. I mean, Rosie and Chris have co-written books. They both co-wrote one about a Poon army, so that feels like perfect Taskmaster fare for the kind of silliness that the show needs. So I think Rosie Ramsey might be the kind of dark horse to win. Is there anyone who you think maybe might not do so well?
Well, part of me wonders if Jason Mantzoukas will be so passionate about it and so kind of throwing himself into it, coming out from as the outsider into the series, that maybe he'll end up kind of overcompensating and it not quite working and it not quite. And I also just think it would be funny, and I think Greg would find it funny to kind of punish the guy who really loves the show and really is passionate about it and actually end up not getting many points. I think, that's not necessarily a prediction, but something that I think would be quite funny if that happened.
Yeah, I can see that. Greg does like to punish people. And I think that's what you've got to read into. You've got who's Greg going to take against. That's why I think Mathew Baynton might do well, because he comes across as just, who could hate Mathew Baynton?
Exactly, very
lovely bloke.
Guy, yeah.
I don't know. Will Greg might take against Stevie Martin, maybe? The kind of
for not being Steve Martin.
For not being Steve Martin, the kind of fresh face on the Taskmaster lineup, maybe. But I don't know. I hopefully this could be the first series where they're all tie. Just a nice sense. Everyone shakes hands and goes home.
And it's perfect.
And that's it. There we go. That's our thoughts on the new season. Let us know in the comments below what you think of the new lineup. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here for more Taskmaster soon.